The ballroom glittered with champagne and cruelty, a kingdom of silk and shadows where Chicago's most powerful families circled like wolves in Armani. In the corner, ignored by everyone who mattered, sat a boy with dark curls and eyes that saw too much, the untouchable son of the city's most feared man. She shouldn't have noticed him, shouldn't have cared, but when their eyes met across that golden room, something ancient and impossible shifted inside her chest, a recognition that tasted like fate and felt like falling, and she knew with terrifying certainty that walking toward him would change absolutely everything. Welcome, besties. Please like, share, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from, because this story is about to wreck you in the best way possible. The Rossi Family Charity Gala was the event of the Chicago social season, held in the grand ballroom of the Continental Hotel, where crystal chandeliers cast diamond light across marble floors and champagne flowed like water. Every important family in the city had come to pay homage, to be seen, to curry favor with the man who controlled half of Chicago's power structure from the shadows. Valentino Rossi stood near the orchestra, a glass of scotch in his hand he hadn't touched in 20 minutes, his dark eyes scanning the room with the cold efficiency of a man who'd built an empire on reading people's intentions before they acted. At 42, he was handsome in the dangerous way that made smart women keep their distance, all sharp jaw and controlled power wrapped in a custom Tom Ford suit that cost more than most people's cars. His reputation preceded him everywhere, the billionaire with ties to every corridor of power in the city, legitimate and otherwise, a man who'd never lost a negotiation and never forgot a betrayal. But tonight, his attention kept drifting to the corner of the ballroom, to the table where his son sat alone. Marco was 12 years old, with his father's dark curls and his late mother's gentle eyes, dressed in a small suit that had been tailored perfectly but that he kept tugging it like it didn't quite fit. He sat very still, hands folded in his lap, watching the dancers with an expression that was simultaneously fascinated and overwhelmed, his lips moving slightly as he counted something only he could see. Valentino's jaw tightened as he watched a group of mothers deliberately steer their children away from Marco's table, whispering behind their hands with the casual cruelty of women who'd never been told no in their lives. His son didn't seem to notice, too focused on whatever pattern he was tracking in the music or the movement or the light. But Valentino noticed everything, catalogued every slight, every turn back, every deliberate snub. His son was different, brilliant and beautiful, and utterly himself in ways that made others uncomfortable, and Valentino would burn this entire room to the ground before he let anyone make Marco feel less than extraordinary. A hand touched his arm, and he turned to find Victoria Castellano smiling up at him, all red lips and calculating eyes, her dress cut low enough to be an invitation. She'd been pursuing him for months, ever since her divorce from the senator had been finalized, convinced that her pedigree and her body would be enough to tempt him into something permanent. "Valentino, darling, you look so serious," she purred, pressing closer than necessary. "It's a party. You should be enjoying yourself." He removed her hand from his arm with a kind of cold precision that made grown men nervous. "I am enjoying myself." "You're watching your son sit alone in the corner," she said, dropping the flirtation for something sharper. "You know, if you just send him to that boarding school in Switzerland I mentioned, he could get the specialized attention he needs, and you wouldn't have to worry about, well, situations like this." Valentino's eyes went glacial, the temperature around them dropping 10 degrees. "My son is exactly where he needs to be, which is with me. And if I hear you or anyone else suggest otherwise again, you'll find that my charity has limits." Victoria paled, stepping back, because everyone knew that Valentino Rossi's threats were never empty. She murmured something about powder rooms and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Valentino to return his attention to Marco, who was now tracing patterns on the white tablecloth with one finger, lost in whatever world existed inside his extraordinary mind. That's when she walked into the ballroom. Valentino noticed her immediately, the way a hunter notices movement in the forest, some instinct older than thought pulling his attention to the entrance. She wasn't supposed to be here, wasn't on any guest list he'd approved, which meant she'd come with someone else, probably as a +1 to one of the lower-tier families desperate to make connections. She was beautiful in a way that hit him like a fist to the chest, all curves and soft skin, and auburn hair that caught the light like copper, wearing a dress that was elegant without trying too hard, deep green silk that wrapped around her body like water. But it wasn't her beauty that held his attention. It was the way she moved, confident but not arrogant, observing the room with intelligent hazel eyes that saw too much, a small smile playing at her lips like she was in on a joke no one else understood. Valentino felt something stir in his chest, something he hadn't felt since Maria died 5 years ago. Interest, awareness, the dangerous pull of wanting something he hadn't known was missing. He watched her accept a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, watched her politely extract herself from a conversation with Antonio Marcelli, who was clearly trying to impress her, watched her drift through the crowd like she was looking for someone or something and hadn't found it yet. And then she saw Marco. Valentino saw the exact moment her gaze landed on his son, saw her expression shift from polite observation to something softer, warmer, something that looked almost like recognition. She didn't look away, didn't turn her back, didn't whisper to anyone nearby. She just watched Marco trace his patterns on the tablecloth, her head tilting slightly like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Then she started walking toward him. Valentino moved before he thought about it, crossing the ballroom with the kind of speed that made people jump out of his way, his heart doing something strange and tight in his chest because he didn't know what this woman wanted with his son, and he'd learned the hard way that people's intentions were rarely pure. But he was too far away to stop her before she reached Marco's table. She paused a few feet away, not crowding the boy, giving him space to notice her on his own terms. When Marco finally looked up, she smiled, genuine and warm, and said something Valentino couldn't hear over the orchestra. Marco blinked at her, his fingers still moving in their pattern, then said something back. She laughed, the sound carrying across the room like music, and gestured to the empty chair beside him. Marco hesitated, then nodded, and she sat down not too close, respecting his space in a way that made Valentino's chest do something complicated. He reached the table, just as she was pointing to something on Marco's plate, some geometric arrangement of food that his son had created instead of eating, and Marco was explaining something with more animation than Valentino had seen from him all night. "The angles create a perfect ratio," Marco was saying, his eyes bright behind his glasses. "See? Each piece is exactly 3 centimeters from the next, and if you draw lines between them, they form a star pattern with 7 points. "That's beautiful," she said, and she meant it. Valentino could hear it in her voice. "I've never seen anyone do something like that before. You must have an amazing eye for patterns." Marco ducked his head, pleased and shy, then looked up at her with sudden intensity. "Most people think it's weird. Most people don't understand that there's beauty in structure," she replied, her voice gentle but matter-of-fact. "I think it's extraordinary." Valentino stood there, frozen, watching the stranger see his son, really see him, not as a problem to be fixed or a reputation to be managed, but as exactly who he was. She looked up then, seeming to sense his presence, and their eyes met for the first time. The impact was physical, like touching a live wire, every nerve in Valentino's body suddenly awake and aware in a way that felt dangerous and inevitable and completely beyond his control. Her eyes widened slightly, her lips parting on an inhaled breath, and he knew she felt it too, this impossible pull, this recognition that made no sense. She was the first to break eye contact, looking back at Marco with a slight flush on her cheeks that Valentino wanted to trace with his fingers, wanted to taste with his mouth, wanted things he had no business wanting from a woman whose name he didn't even know. "I'm Sophia," she told Marco, extending her hand. "I'm nobody important, just someone who appreciates good architecture, whether it's buildings or dinner plates." Marco shook her hand solemnly, the first time Valentino had seen him willingly touch a stranger in months. "I'm Marco Rossi. My dad owns this hotel." "Does he?" Sophia's eyes flicked up to Valentino again, something knowing and amused in her gaze. "That must be nice." "It's okay," Marco said seriously. "But he works too much and sometimes forgets to eat, so I have to remind him." Valentino felt his lips twitch despite himself. "I never forget to eat." "You forgot yesterday," Marco pointed out. "And the day before that. And last Tuesday you had 3 cups of coffee and half a protein bar." Sophia laughed again, that sound that was doing dangerous things to Valentino's composure. "He's got you there." Valentino moved closer, some possessive instinct making him want to establish his presence, his claim, even though he had no claim on this woman at all. I don't believe we've met. I'm Valentino Rossi. I figured, she said, standing to shake his hand, and the moment their skin touched, Valentino felt electricity arc between them, saw her pupils dilate, felt his own pulse kick into overdrive. Everyone in Chicago knows who you are. And yet I don't know who you are, he said, not releasing her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a touch that was completely inappropriate and absolutely intentional. Which is unusual, since I make it my business to know everyone at my events. She gently extracted her hand, a small smile playing at her lips. I came with the Martelli family, they're friends of my aunt's. I'm just visiting Chicago for a few weeks, helping her with her gallery. Before Valentino could press for more information, the orchestra shifted to a new song, something slower and more romantic, and couples began moving onto the dance floor. Marco looked at the dancers with that intense focus he brought to everything, his fingers tapping against his leg in a pattern that matched the rhythm. Sophia noticed, because of course she did, because she seemed to notice everything about his son that others missed. Do you like to dance? She asked Marco casually, like she was asking about the weather. Marco shook his head. Too many people. Too loud. And I don't know the steps. What if it was just one person? Sophia asked. And what if they didn't care about the steps, just about moving to the music? Marco looked at her, uncertainty and longing warring on his young face. Would people stare? Probably, Sophia said honestly. But would you care if you were having fun? Valentino watched his son process this, saw the exact moment Marco made his decision, saw him stand up with that careful deliberation he brought to everything new. Will you dance with me? Marco asked, his voice quiet but steady. Sophia's smile was radiant. I would be honored. She led Marco onto the dance floor, not to the center where everyone would stare, but to the edge where they could move without being crowded. Valentino followed, unable to stop himself, positioning himself where he could watch them without being intrusive. Sophia bent down to Marco's level, speaking quietly, probably explaining that there were no rules, that he could move however felt right. And then they were dancing, sort of, Marco's movements a little stiff but growing more confident as Sophia matched his rhythm, let him lead even as she guided, made it safe for him to try something new. Other couples noticed. Valentino saw the looks, heard the whispers, felt his jaw tighten with protective fury. But then he saw his son's face, saw the joy breaking across Marco's features like sunrise, saw him laugh as Sophia spun him in a careful circle, and nothing else mattered. Your son is wonderful, a voice said beside him, and Valentino turned to find Sophia's aunt, Maria Martelli, watching the dancers with knowing eyes. And your interest in my niece is written all over your face, Valentino. I don't know what you mean, he said unconvincingly. Maria laughed. I've known you 20 years. I know what that look means. Just be careful with her, please. Sophia's had enough people try to use her for her looks or her connections, or whatever else they think she can offer. She deserves someone who sees her. I see her, Valentino said, the words escaping before he could stop them, rough and honest and more revealing than he'd intended. Good, Maria said simply. Because she's already seeing your son, really seeing him, and that tells me everything I need to know about her heart. The song ended, and Marco came rushing back, his cheeks flushed and his eyes bright. Dad, did you see? I danced. Sophia showed me how, and it wasn't scary at all. I saw, Valentino said, his throat tight. You were amazing, figlio mio. Sophia returned more slowly, something soft and vulnerable in her expression as she watched father and son, and Valentino felt that pull again, stronger now, dangerous and irresistible. Thank you, he said to her, meaning for so much more than just the dance. She met his eyes, and this time she didn't look away. He's special. I hope you know that. I do, Valentino said. Every single day. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of too many people wanting Valentino's attention, business conversations he couldn't avoid, obligations he couldn't ignore. But his awareness never left Sophia, tracked her movements across the room with a focus that should have alarmed him, noticed every man who tried to approach her and how she politely extracted herself from each conversation, saw the moment she slipped out onto the terrace for air. He followed without thinking, some compulsion stronger than common sense pulling him after her. She stood at the railing, looking out over the Chicago skyline, the city lights reflecting in her eyes like stars. She didn't turn when he approached, but he saw her shoulders relax slightly, like she'd been expecting him. "Is this where you normally corner women at your parties?" she asked, amusement in her voice. "Only the ones who dance with my son," Valentino replied, moving to stand beside her, close enough to feel the heat of her body, far enough to give her space to run if she wanted to. Sophia turned to look at him, really look at him, and he felt exposed under that gaze in a way he hadn't felt in years. "He's lucky to have you. A father who loves him exactly as he is." "I'm the lucky one," Valentino said. He's everything, Sophia. The best part of my life, the only purely good thing I've ever created." "I can see that," she said softly. "The way he talks about you, the way he watches you when you're not looking, making sure you're okay, it's beautiful." Valentino's hand moved before he could stop it, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from her face, his knuckles grazing her cheek. She inhaled sharply but didn't pull away, and God help him, he wanted to kiss her, wanted it with an intensity that bordered on madness. "Stay in Chicago," he said, the words surprising both of them. "Don't go back to wherever you came from. Stay." "I don't even know you," Sophia whispered, but her eyes said something different, said she felt this too, this impossible pull. "So get to know me," Valentino said. "Have dinner with me tomorrow night. And if I say no," his smile was dangerous, all wolf and no sheep, "then I'll ask again the next day, and the day after that, until you say yes, or until you leave Chicago, whichever comes first." Sophia laughed, shaking her head. "Has anyone ever told you that you're intense?" "Frequently," Valentino said. "Usually right before they give me what I want." She should have been offended, should have walked away, but instead she smiled, something challenging and interested sparking in her eyes. "I'll have dinner with you, but not tomorrow. I need time to figure out if you're actually a good man or just very good at pretending." "Fair enough," Valentino conceded, even though waiting felt like torture. "But Sophia, I'm not pretending anything. What you see is exactly what you get." "That's what worries me," she said, but she was still smiling as she walked back inside, leaving Valentino alone on the terrace with his racing heart and the absolute certainty that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't begin to predict. The next morning, Sophia woke in her aunt's guest room with Valentino Rossi occupying entirely too much space in her thoughts. She'd come to Chicago to escape a failed engagement and a family that didn't understand why she'd walked away from a perfectly suitable man who checked all the appropriate boxes, but who'd also made her feel like a beautiful object to be displayed rather than a person to be known. She hadn't expected to walk into a charity gala and find a boy who saw patterns in everything and a father who loved him with a fierceness that made her chest ache. Hadn't expected to feel that electric pull toward a man whose reputation should have sent her running in the opposite direction. Over breakfast, Maria watched her with knowing eyes. "So, you danced with Marco Rossi last night." "He's a sweet kid," Sophia said, keeping her voice casual. "Smart, too. The way he sees the world is fascinating." "And his father?" Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. "What about him?" "Don't play coy with me. I saw the way he looked at you," Maria said. "Like you were the only person in that entire ballroom. Valentino Rossi doesn't look at anyone like that. Hasn't since Maria died." "His wife?" Maria nodded. "Childhood sweethearts, married young, completely devoted to each other. When she died, something in him died too, or so everyone thought. He threw himself into business, into building his empire, into being the best father he could be to Marco, but he never looked at another woman. Until you." Sophia's heart did something complicated in her chest. "I'm only here for a few weeks." "Maybe," Maria said. "Or maybe fate has other plans. That boy needs someone who sees him, and that man needs someone who sees past the armor he wears. From where I'm sitting, you see them both just fine." Before Sophia could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Marco wants to know if you like butterflies. He's building something in the garden and thinks you should see it. Also, I'm not supposed to mention that I obtained your number from your aunt, who gave it willingly despite her lecture about patience." "V." Sophia laughed despite herself, something warm blooming in her chest. She texted back, "Tell Marco I love butterflies. What time should I be there?" The response came immediately. Now would be ideal. I'll send a car. Absolutely not, Sophia typed. I'm perfectly capable of taking a cab. The car is already outside. Argue with me later, preferably over wine when Marco is asleep, and I can give you my full attention. V. Sophia looked at her aunt, who was trying very hard not to smile. He sent a car. Of course he did, Maria said. That man doesn't do anything halfway. The Rossi estate was located in an exclusive area north of the city, set back from the road behind iron gates and manicured grounds. The house itself was a sprawling Italian villa, all stone and arched windows and gardens that looked like something out of a Renaissance painting. Marco met her at the front door, practically vibrating with excitement. Sophia, you came. I made something I need to show you, but it's very important that you walk exactly where I tell you to walk because the pattern is precise. I will follow your instructions exactly, Sophia promised, charmed by his enthusiasm. Valentino appeared behind his son, wearing jeans and a black t-shirt that should have made him look casual but somehow only emphasized the lethal grace of his body. His dark eyes heated when they landed on her, a look that made her skin feel too tight. Sophia, he said, her name a caress in his accented English. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the very insistent car, she replied, amused. I'm nothing if not efficient, Valentino said, something dangerous and playful in his smile. Marco led them through the house and out into the garden, where he created an elaborate pathway using stones, shells, and flower petals, all arranged in a complex geometric pattern that spiraled toward a central point. At the center was a butterfly garden, currently empty but clearly designed to attract specific species. It's based on the Fibonacci sequence, Marco explained, his hands moving as he talked. See how each section relates to the next? When the butterflies come, they'll naturally follow the pattern because nature follows mathematics. Sophia knelt down to examine the work, genuinely impressed. This is incredible, Marco. You're an artist and a mathematician. Marco beamed, then looked at his father. Can Sophia stay for lunch? Please. Valentino's eyes met Sophia's, something hot and possessive in his gaze. Can you? She should say no, should maintain some distance, should protect herself from whatever this was building between them. Instead, she heard herself say, I'd love to. Lunch was served on the terrace overlooking the gardens, a casual affair of pasta and salad and easy conversation. Marco dominated most of the discussion, explaining his latest projects and asking Sophia questions about her work at her aunt's gallery, her thoughts on art and beauty and pattern. Valentino mostly watched, contributing occasionally, but seeming content to observe the way Sophia engaged with his son, never talking down to him, never dismissing his interests, treating him like the intelligent person he was. After lunch, Marco excused himself to work on another project, leaving Valentino and Sophia alone on the terrace with the remains of their wine. He doesn't usually warm up to people that quickly, Valentino said, his eyes on her face. You're good with him. He's easy to be good with, Sophia replied. He's smart and funny, and sees the world in ways most people miss. You should be proud. I am, Valentino said. Every single day, even when it's hard, even when the world doesn't understand him, I'm proud. Sophia felt her heart crack open a little at the fierce love in his voice. Can I ask what happened to his mother? Valentino's expression darkened, but he answered. Cancer. Ovarian. By the time they found it, it had spread everywhere. She fought for 2 years, wanted to see Marco start school, wanted to be there for all his firsts. She made it to his 7th birthday, and then she was gone. I'm so sorry, Sophia said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. Valentino turned his palm up, lacing their fingers together, his thumb stroking across her knuckles in a touch that felt both comforting and electric. Marco was devastated, stopped talking for 6 months. The doctor said it was trauma, that he might never be the same. But slowly, he found his way back, just different than before. More focused on patterns and structure, like he needed to find order in a world that had become chaos. And you held him together, Sophia said, seeing it clearly. I tried, Valentino said. Some days I succeeded, some days I failed, but I never stopped trying. They sat there in the afternoon sun, hands linked across the table, and Sophia felt something shift inside her chest, some wall she'd built after her broken engagement crumbling in the face of this man's brutal honesty and fierce love for his son. I should go, she said eventually, though she didn't want to. You should stay, Valentino countered, his grip on her hand tightening. Have dinner with us. Let me cook for you. You cook? His smile was devastating. I'm Italian, Cara. Of course I cook. Sophia knew she should leave, should protect her heart from whatever this was becoming. But looking into Valentino's dark eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers, she found she didn't want to be careful, didn't want to be smart. Okay, she said. Dinner. Valentino's smile was victory and promise, and he'd all rolled into one dangerous expression. Good. Then let me show you the rest of the estate while Marco works on his latest masterpiece. The next few weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and growing connection. Sophia found herself at the Rossi estate more often than not, drawn by Marco's enthusiasm for showing her his latest projects, and by Valentino's intense attention whenever she was near. They had dinner together several times a week, sometimes all three of them, sometimes just Valentino and Sophia after Marco went to bed. Those nights were dangerous, filled with wine and conversation that ranged from philosophy to art to the very specific heat building between them, a tension that grew more unbearable with each lingering look, each accidental touch. Valentino was courting her, Sophia realized, in the old-fashioned sense of the word. He sent flowers to her aunt's gallery, rare books he thought she'd enjoy, tickets to shows he knew she wanted to see. He learned what she liked and didn't like, remembered every detail she shared, treated her like she was precious and fascinating and utterly essential to his happiness. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. One evening, 3 weeks after the gala, Sophia arrived at the estate to find Valentino alone on the terrace, a bottle of wine already open, his expression troubled. "Where's Marco?" she asked, accepting the glass he poured for her. "Sleep over at his friend David's house," Valentino said. "First one he's ever wanted to attend. I'm trying not to be anxious about it." Sophia smiled, touching his arm in comfort. "He's growing up. That's good." "I know," Valentino said. "Doesn't make it easier." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the gardens. Then Valentino spoke, his voice rough. "I need to tell you something, Sophia. About who I am, what I do." "I know who you are," Sophia said quietly. "You know my reputation," Valentino corrected. "You don't know the reality. My business interests aren't all, let's say, they aren't all reported to the IRS. I have connections that would make your family very uncomfortable. I've done things, ordered things, that good men don't do." Sophia turned to face him fully. "Are you trying to scare me away?" "I'm trying to be honest," Valentino said. "Because this, whatever this is between us, it's becoming something I can't control, and I need you to know what you'd be getting into if we continue." "And what would I be getting into?" Valentino stood, pulling her up with him, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that contradicted the intensity burning in his eyes. "Everything, Sophia. All of me, the good and the bad, the legal and the not quite legal, the parts that are dangerous, and the parts that would burn the world down to keep you safe." Sophia's breath caught, her heart racing. "That's a lot." "It is," Valentino agreed. "So if you want to walk away, do it now, before I stop being able to let you go." She should walk away, should listen to every instinct screaming that this was too much, too fast, too dangerous. But looking into his eyes, feeling his hands gentle on her face, she found she didn't care about should. "I don't want to walk away," she whispered. Valentino made a sound low in his throat, something between relief and hunger, and then he was kissing her, finally, after weeks of tension and wanting and holding back. His mouth was hot and demanding, one hand sliding into her hair while the other pulled her body flush against his, and Sophia felt herself melt into him, opening to the kiss, matching his intensity with her own. They stumbled backward, Valentino's back hitting the stone wall of the terrace. Sophia pressed against him, her hands fisting in his shirt. The kiss turned desperate, all the weeks of restraint burning away in the heat building between them. Valentino broke away first, his breathing ragged, his eyes dark with desire. "Inside, now, before I take you right here where anyone could see." Sophia nodded, beyond words, and let him lead her through the house to his bedroom, a space she'd never seen, all dark wood and masculine elegance, and a bed that dominated the room. What happened next was heat and surrender and connection, so intense it felt spiritual. Two people coming together like they'd been made to fit exactly this way. Valentino was both gentle and demanding, learning her body with focused intensity, taking her apart with hands and mouth, and the perfect weight of him inside her until she shattered in his arms, crying out his name like a prayer. Later, much later, they lay tangled together in his bed, Sophia's head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "Stay tonight," Valentino said, not quite a question. "Marco will be home in the morning," Sophia pointed out. "I know," Valentino said. "Stay anyway. Let him see that you're part of this, part of us." Sophia lifted her head to look at him. "Is that what I am? Part of you?" "You're everything," Valentino said simply. "The moment you walked across that ballroom to my son, you became everything." Sophia felt tears prick her eyes because no one had ever looked at her like this, like she hung the moon, like she was essential and precious and completely irreplaceable. "I'm falling in love with you," she whispered, the confession escaping before she could stop it. "Both of you, and it terrifies me." Valentino rolled her beneath him, bracing his weight on his forearms, his dark eyes intense. "Good. Be terrified. Fall anyway. Because I'm already gone, Tesoro. Completely, irrevocably, dangerously in love with you." He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise and a claiming all at once, and Sophia kissed him back, letting herself fall into this impossible love, into this dangerous man and his extraordinary son, into a future she couldn't predict but desperately wanted. The next morning, Marco came home to find Sophia in the kitchen making breakfast with his father, the two of them moving around each other with easy intimacy, Valentino's hand settling on the small of Sophia's back whenever he passed, her smile soft and bright. Marco looked between them, processing, then smiled. "Are you staying now? Like really staying?" Sophia glanced at Valentino, saw the hope and heat in his eyes, then looked back at Marco. "If you'll have me, yes. I'm staying." Marco's whoop of joy echoed through the house as he launched himself at Sophia, hugging her tight. "This is the best day ever." Over his head, Valentino met Sophia's eyes, and she saw her future written there, complex and beautiful and absolutely worth fighting for. The next few months were bliss, Sophia gradually moving her things from her aunt's house to the estate, finding her place in the rhythm of Valentino and Marco's life. She loved them both, differently but equally fiercely, loved the way Marco would seek her out to share his latest discovery, loved the way Valentino looked at her like she was the answer to questions he hadn't known he was asking. But happiness in Valentino's world was never without complications. The threat came from an unexpected source. Antonio Marcelli, the man who tried to flirt with Sophia at the charity gala, who'd been making moves on Valentino's territory for months, testing boundaries, pushing limits. It started small, business deals falling through at the last minute, shipments delayed, sources drying up. Valentino recognized the pattern immediately, the work of someone trying to destabilize his operations, trying to find weaknesses to exploit. He increased security around the estate, had his men investigate, but Antonio was careful, leaving no direct evidence of his involvement. Then came the night that changed everything. Sophia had taken Marco to his weekly art class in the city, a routine they'd established. Her car followed at a discreet distance by one of Valentino's security team. But the class ran late, and in the chaos of parents picking up their children, the security detail lost sight of them in traffic. Sophia didn't notice the black SUV following her until it was too late, until she was pulling into the garage at the estate and armed men were surrounding her car before she could even process what was happening. She locked the doors immediately, reaching for her phone to call Valentino, but one of the men smashed the window, reaching in to grab her arm. Marco screamed, and the sound ignited something primal in Sophia, some mama bear instinct she didn't know she possessed. She fought, scratching and biting and kicking, keeping her body between Marco and the men, screaming for help. The security team inside the house heard and came running, gunfire erupting in the garage, chaos and smoke and terror. And then Valentino was there, appearing like an avenging angel, his gun in hand, his face a mask of cold fury as he put himself between Sophia and the attackers. The fight was brutal and brief, Valentino's men well-trained and motivated by loyalty to a boss they respected. When the smoke cleared, 3 of Antonio's men were dead. two more injured and restrained, and Valentino was pulling Sofia and Marco from the car, his hands running over them frantically, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "Did they touch you? Marco, Figlio, are you okay?" "We're okay," Sofia managed, though she was trembling violently. "Valentino, I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. I should have—" "No," he cut her off, pulling her against his chest, one arm around her and the other around Marco. "This is not your fault. This is Antonio fucking Marcelli deciding he could touch what's mine and thinking there wouldn't be consequences." His voice was cold enough to freeze blood, and Sofia saw in his eyes the man his enemies feared, ruthless and completely without mercy when it came to protecting his family. The police came. Statements were taken, the evidence overwhelming that this had been an attempted kidnapping. Antonio Marcelli was arrested within hours, found at his club surrounded by lawyers who couldn't save him from the mountain of evidence Valentino's investigators had compiled. But the damage was done, Sofia's sense of safety shattered, Marco having nightmares about bad men coming to take them away. That night, after Marco finally fell asleep between them in the master bed, Sofia turned to Valentino in the darkness. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't put Marco in danger. If something happened to him because of me—" "Nothing happened to him because of you," Valentino said fiercely, propping himself up on one elbow to look at her. "Something almost happened because Antonio Marcelli is a psychopath who thought he could hurt me by taking the people I love. And now he'll rot in prison for the rest of his miserable life." "But what about next time?" Sofia asked, tears streaming down her face. "What about the next person who wants to hurt you and decides we're the way to do it? I love you, Valentino. I love you both so much it terrifies me, but I can't." Valentino kissed her, hard and desperate, tasting the salt of her tears. "You can. You will. Because I'm not letting you go, Sofia. I will burn this entire city to ash before I let anyone take you from me. I will dismantle my empire piece by piece if that's what it takes to keep you safe. But I will not. I cannot lose you." "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good," Valentino said. "Be scared. But be scared here, with me, where I can protect you. Where Marco can wake up every morning knowing you'll be there. Where we can build the family we were always meant to be." Sofia looked at Marco sleeping peacefully between them, then back at Valentino, seeing the fierce love and absolute certainty in his eyes. "Promise me," she whispered. "Promise me you'll keep him safe, that you'll keep us all safe." "I swear it," Valentino said. "On my life, on everything I am. I swear I will protect you both. Always." The next morning, Valentino called a meeting with every family head in Chicago, a show of force that made it clear the attack on his family would not be tolerated or forgiven. He restructured his organization, bringing in new security, eliminating vulnerabilities, making it clear that anyone who threatened his family would face swift and absolute retribution. Marco, resilient in the way children are, bounced back faster than the adults, though he insisted on sleeping between Valentino and Sofia for another week before gradually returning to his own room. Sofia stayed because leaving would have broken all three of their hearts, and because she'd meant what she said. She loved them, completely and irrevocably, and she was brave enough to fight for that love. 3 months later, on a perfect autumn evening, Valentino took Sofia and Marco back to the Continental Hotel, back to the ballroom where this had all begun. The room was empty except for the three of them and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Rose petals covered the floor in the same geometric pattern Marco had once created in the garden, spiraling toward the center where Valentino stood waiting. "What is this?" Sofia asked, her heart in her throat. "This is where you saw us," Valentino said. "Where you chose to see Marco when everyone else looked away. Where you chose to see me when you had every reason to walk in the other direction." He dropped to one knee, pulling a velvet box from his pocket, and Sofia's breath stopped. "Sofia, you saved us. Both of us. You walked into our lives and made us whole in ways we didn't know we were broken. You love my son like he was your own. You love me despite all my darkness and danger. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that choice." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was vintage and elegant and absolutely perfect. "Marry me, tesoro. Marry us. Be the mother Marco deserves, and the wife I need and the partner I choose every single day. Make this family complete. Sophia looked at Marco, who was beaming, practically vibrating with excitement. We planned it together, he confessed. Dad let me help pick the pattern for the rose petals. She laughed through her tears, dropping to her knees in front of Valentino, her hands framing his face. Yes. Yes to all of it. To you, to Marco, to this beautiful, complicated, perfect family. Valentino kissed her like he was drowning, and she was air, the string quartet swelling into something triumphant as Marco hooped and ran to join them, the three of them tangled together in the center of a spiral of roses. 1 year later, Sophia stood in the same ballroom, now filled with flowers and guests, wearing a dress that made her feel like a princess, Marco at her side in a small tux as her ring bearer, beaming with pride. And at the end of the aisle, Valentino waited, looking devastating in his suit, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked toward him, toward their future, toward forever. The ceremony was beautiful, their vows honest and emotional, Marco crying happy tears when they included him in their promises to each other. But the most perfect moment came at the reception, when Marco tugged on Sophia's sleeve and asked, "Will you dance with me again? Like that first night?" Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she took his hand. "Always, sweetheart, always." And as they danced, Valentino watching with such love it hurt to look at directly, Sophia thought about that first night, about a boy sitting alone and a choice to see him, really see him, and how that single choice had transformed all their lives. 6 months after the wedding, Sophia discovered she was pregnant. The news sent Marco into orbit with excitement, immediately designing a nursery based on the golden ratio, claiming the baby would appreciate good mathematics from birth. Valentino was different, quieter, more intense, his hands constantly drifting to Sophia's still flat stomach with wonder and possession, his protection of her ratcheting up to almost smothering levels. "I can still function," Sophia reminded him when he tried to prevent her from carrying her own purse. "Pregnancy isn't a disability." "You're carrying my child," Valentino said, like that explained everything. "You're not carrying anything except my child." But his intensity came from love and fear in equal measure, Sophia knew, from losing Maria and being terrified of losing her the same way. She took his face in her hands, made him look at her. "I'm healthy. The baby's healthy. We're going to be fine, all of us, I promise." "You can't promise that," Valentino said roughly. "No," Sophia agreed. "But I can promise I'll fight like hell to stay, to be here, to give you 100 years of arguing over whether I can carry my own purse." He kissed her then, desperate and claiming, and she kissed him back, pouring all her love and certainty into the connection. When their daughter was born, perfect and screaming and absolutely beautiful, Marco declared her a mathematical miracle and Valentino cried while holding her for the first time, this tiny person who was part him and part Sophia and completely perfect. They named her Maria, after Valentino's first wife, because Sophia understood that loving him meant honoring who he'd been before she came along, meant making space for all the love in his enormous heart. And late one night, with infant Maria sleeping in her bassinet and Marco tucked safely in his room down the hall, Valentino pulled Sophia close in their bed, his hand resting on her hip possessively. "I love you," he said, not for the first time, not for the last time, but like he needed her to hear it, to know it bone deep. "I know," Sophia replied. "I love you too, both of you, all three of you now. This whole beautiful, complicated family. You gave me everything," Valentino said. "When you walked across that ballroom to my son, when you saw him, really saw him, you gave me back my faith in people. In goodness, in the possibility that someone could love us exactly as we are." Sophia turned in his arms, her hand finding his face in the darkness. "You gave me everything too. Purpose and family and love, so fierce it still takes my breath away." They lay there in comfortable silence, listening to their daughter's soft breathing, knowing Marco was safe down the hall, knowing they built something extraordinary from that first moment of connection. "Thank you," Valentino whispered. "For what?" "For seeing us. For choosing us. For dancing with my son when everyone else turned away." Sophia smiled in the darkness, remembering that night, that choice, that perfect moment when everything changed. "I'd choose you both again," she said. "Every single time, in every possible world, I'd choose you." And she meant it with her whole heart for the rest of their perfectly imperfect, absolutely beautiful life together.